Welcome to Shivers and Shadows. Prepare to be thrilled and chilled. Hit subscribe and share your shivers in the comments below, if you dare.
The night shift at Mel's Diner was supposed to be uneventful. Nestled on the outskirts of our small town, the diner was a relic from the 1950s, complete with checkered floors, red vinyl booths, and a neon sign that buzzed faintly in the darkness. My name is Tom, and I had been working there for the past 3 months, trying to save up for college. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills. Every night was the same. A few regulars, truck drivers passing through, and the occasional night owl looking for a cup of coffee. The night shift was mostly about keeping the place clean and making sure the coffee pots were full. It was quiet, almost too quiet sometimes, but it was steady work. It was around my second week on the job when I first noticed him. A man, probably in his late 40s, who would come in every night around 2 a.m. He always sat at the same booth in the back corner near the window. He never ordered anything. He just sat there, staring out the window, his face partially obscured by the shadows. At first I thought he was just another loner, someone looking for a place to sit and think. But as the weeks went by, his presence became more unsettling. He never spoke, never moved, just stared. I mentioned it to my coworker, Jenny, but she shrugged it off.
Some people are just weird, Tom. As long as he's not causing any trouble, let him be.
One particularly quiet night, the diner was almost empty. It was just me and the stranger. I was wiping down the counter when I felt his eyes on me. I looked up, and for the first time, our eyes met. His gaze was intense, piercing through the dim light of the diner. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Can I get you something?" I called out, trying to break the silence. He didn't respond, just kept staring. I walked over to his booth, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hey, if you're going to be here every night, you might as well order something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He finally spoke, his voice a low, gravelly whisper.
"I'm waiting."
"Waiting for what?" I asked, genuinely curious.
"You'll see,"
he replied cryptically, then turned back to the window, effectively ending the conversation. I walked back to the counter, more confused than ever. Waiting for what? His words echoed in my mind, but I couldn't make sense of them. I decided to ignore it, chalking it up to just another weird encounter in a long string of night shift oddities. A few nights later, the stranger didn't show up. I was relieved, but also oddly disappointed. His presence, while unsettling, had become a part of my routine. The night dragged on, and just as I was about to close up, a young woman stumbled into the diner. She looked disheveled, her clothes torn and dirty, her eyes wide with fear.
"Help me!"
She gasped, collapsing onto the floor. I rushed to her side, helping her into a booth. "Are you okay? What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling.
"He's after me,"
she whispered, her eyes darting around the diner.
"He's been following me for days."
"Who's after you?" I asked, glancing out the window, half expecting to see the stranger standing there. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong.
"You have to help me. He's coming."
Before I could respond, the bell above the door jingled, and the stranger walked in. The woman screamed, trying to hide under the table. The stranger ignored her, walking straight to his usual booth and sitting down, his eyes never leaving me. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, my fear turning into anger. The woman peeked out from under the table, her eyes filled with terror.
"He's not human,"
she whispered.
"He's a monster."
I looked at the stranger, who was now staring at the woman with a cold, unblinking gaze. "Is this true?" I asked, my voice shaking. The stranger smiled, a slow, chilling grin that sent shivers down my spine.
"You'll see,"
he repeated, his voice a sinister whisper. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to believe the woman, but the rational part of my mind kept telling me that monsters didn't exist. I decided to call the police. As I reached for the phone, the lights in the diner flickered and then went out, plunging us into darkness. The woman screamed again, and I could hear her scrambling under the table. The only light came from the dim glow of the neon sign outside. I could barely make out the stranger's silhouette, still sitting in the booth, unmoving. "Stay here," I whispered to the woman, pulling out my phone to use as a flashlight. I made my way to the breaker box in the back, trying to get the lights back on. As I fumbled with the switches, I heard a strange noise behind me, a low, guttural growl. I turned around, my phone's light cutting through the darkness. The stranger was standing in the doorway, his eyes glowing an unnatural shade of yellow. His grin had widened, revealing sharp, pointed teeth. "Stay away from me!" I shouted, backing up against the wall. He took a step forward, his movements slow and deliberate.
You should have listened.
He said, his voice echoing in the confined space. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and nearly jumped out of my skin. It was the woman. She had followed me, her eyes wide with fear.
We have to get out of here.
She whispered urgently. I nodded, and together we ran back into the main dining area. The stranger was still following us, his eyes glowing brighter in the darkness. We made it to the front door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if it was locked from the outside. "Help us!" I shouted, pounding on the door. Suddenly, the stranger was right behind us. He reached out, and I felt a searing pain in my back as his hand made contact. I screamed, collapsing to the floor. The woman tried to pull me up, but it was no use. The pain was too intense.
You can't escape.
The stranger whispered, leaning down to look me in the eyes.
You belong to me now.
I don't know where I found the strength, but somehow, I managed to push him away. The woman helped me to my feet, and together we ran to the kitchen. We barricaded the door with whatever we could find, tables, chairs, anything that might slow him down. "We have to call for help," I said, my voice trembling. The woman nodded, pulling out her phone.
No signal.
She whispered, her face pale. I tried my own phone, but it was the same. No signal. It was as if the diner was cut off from the rest of the world. "We're trapped," I said, feeling a sense of hopelessness wash over me. The woman grabbed my hand, her eyes filled with determination.
We're not giving up. There has to be a way out.
We searched the kitchen, looking for any possible escape route. Finally, we found a small window above the sink. It was a tight fit, but it was our only hope. "You go first," I said, helping the woman up. She managed to squeeze through, and I followed, gritting my teeth against the pain in my back. We fell into the alley behind the diner, gasping for breath. The night was eerily quiet, the only sound our ragged breathing.
We need to get to the police.
The woman said, helping me to my feet. We stumbled through the alley, our steps unsteady. I kept glancing back, expecting to see the stranger following us, but there was no sign of him. Finally, we made it to the main road. A patrol car was parked at the end of the street, and we ran towards it, waving frantically. The officer got out, his eyes widening in surprise when he saw us.
What happened?
He asked, his hand on his gun. "Please, you have to help us," I gasped. "There's a man, a monster, at the diner. He tried to kill us." The officer called for backup and led us to his car.
Stay here.
He said, his voice calm and reassuring.
We'll take care of it.
We watched as more patrol cars arrived, their lights flashing in the darkness. The officers entered the diner, but after a few minutes, they came back out, shaking their heads.
There's no one there,
One of them said.
and no sign of a struggle.
I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. "But he was there," I insisted. "You have to believe us." The officer looked at me, his expression sympathetic.
We'll keep an eye out.
He said,
But for now, I suggest you both go home and get some rest.
The woman and I exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch. I went home, but sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the stranger's glowing eyes and heard his sinister whisper. The next day, I called in sick, unable to face the diner. I spent the day researching anything that might explain what had happened. I found stories of similar encounters, people who had seen glowing-eyed figures and lived to tell the tale. But there were no explanations, no solutions, only warnings. That night, I received a call from the woman.
Tom, I think I found something.
She said, her voice shaking.
Meet me at the library.
I arrived at the library, and she showed me a book she had found in the local history section. It was about a series of disappearances in the 1950s, right around the time the diner had first opened. The victims had all been last seen at the diner, and their descriptions matched the stranger's appearance. "This can't be a coincidence," I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. The woman nodded.
I think he's been haunting the diner for decades, looking for his next victim.
We decided to return to the diner that night, determined to find a way to stop him. Armed with flashlights and a sense of determination, we made our way to the back alley and climbed through the same window we had escaped from. The diner was dark and silent, just as we had left it. We moved cautiously, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. As we approached the booth where the stranger always sat, we heard a faint whisper.
You shouldn't have come back.
I turned around, and there he was, standing in the doorway. His eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and his grin was wider than ever. "This ends tonight," I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. The woman stepped forward, holding up the book.
We know what you are,
She said.
and we know how to stop you.
The stranger laughed, a cold, mirthless sound.
You can't stop me.
He said,
I'm eternal.
but we had a plan. According to the book, the only way to banish the spirit was to destroy the place it was bound to. We had brought gasoline and matches, and we were ready to do whatever it took. As the stranger advanced, I doused the booth in gasoline, the pungent smell filling the air. The woman struck a match, her hand trembling, and tossed it onto the booth. The flames erupted, spreading quickly. The stranger screamed, a horrible, inhuman sound, as the fire engulfed him. The diner began to burn, the flames licking at the walls and ceiling. We ran for the window, climbing out just as the fire spread through the kitchen. We stood in the alley, watching as the diner was consumed by flames. The fire department arrived, but it was too late. The diner burned to the ground, leaving nothing but charred remains. In the days that followed, the town was abuzz with rumors about the fire. The official story was that it was an accident, but we knew the truth. The woman and I stayed in touch, finding solace in each other's company. We had faced something unimaginable and survived, but we were forever changed. I never returned to the night shift. I found a new job, one that didn't involve dark, lonely nights. The woman moved away, hoping to start fresh somewhere new. We kept in contact for a while, but eventually, life moved on, and our paths diverged. But I never forgot. Sometimes, late at night, I would wake up and see those glowing eyes in the darkness, hear that sinister whisper.
You'll see.
And I did see. I saw the darkness that lurks in the shadows, the monsters that hide behind human faces. I learned that sometimes, the things we fear are real, and they are closer than we think. The night shift at Mel's Diner was supposed to be uneventful, but it turned into a nightmare. I survived, but the memory of that night will haunt me forever. And I'll always wonder, what if he's still out there, waiting for his next victim?
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share if you enjoyed this video.